Hi. In this video, we're going to be discussing the fruit of the loom Mandela effect. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially that the fruit of the loom logo has never had a cornucopia in it. You can go as far back as the 1800s when the company was founded. The logo was different than it is today. It's gone through several changes, but not once has it ever had a cornucopia in it, despite the fact that thousands of people remember there being a cornucopia. And not just remember, but very many, probably thousands, definitely hundreds upon hundreds of people vividly remember there being a cornucopia with reinforcing associative details that corroborate that memory. So let's begin. I put down some things on a piece of paper here just to organize my thoughts, and I'm just going to kind of go down the list. And I've done this video, I've tried to shoot this video several times, and I just get lost in the tangents. So I'll try not to digress too much this time. First off, obscurity. I'm getting a phone call, but it looks like I'm still recording, so I'm just going to let that go away. Sorry about that. Alright, so obscurity. What do I mean by obscurity? In one of my attempts at this video, I gave an example with numbers. And I think that's a pretty good example, so I'm going to do that one again. If I said, pick a number between 1 and a million, what's the likelihood of you picking 17,596? Not very likely compared to, in my opinion, picking the number 7. If you interviewed, or not interviewed, but if you asked 1,000 people, pick a number between 1 and a million, my bet is that more people would guess the number 7 than there would be people who guessed the number 17,596. But, like I said, tangents. Let me digress a little bit here. If the number 596, if that number had some significance, like let's say, this is obviously wrong, but let's say there are 17,596 days in a year, then suddenly that number, even though it's so big, it would become less obscure because there is something associative about it. But the number 7, it is much more likely because it's less obscure because hopefully you know what I'm getting at, and last time I tried to discuss this, it took way too many words. So hopefully you know what I mean by the number 17,596 is more obscure than the number 7 when it comes to guess a number between 1 and a million. If you asked out 1,000 people, I'd expect a few people to say 7, or maybe 2, or 10, or 12, or 13. But really, out of those 1,000 people, I honestly would not expect one single person to pick 17,596. Maybe one person, maybe even a few people would, but that is not very likely. So let me relate this to, sorry, my cat's making noise. Let me relate this to the fruit of the loom Mandela effect. How obscure is a cornucopia compared to a basket or a bowl when it comes to containing fruit or presenting fruit? In my opinion, a cornucopia is more obscure than either a bowl, a fruit bowl, or a basket, a fruit basket. And another little tangent here, a fruit basket, I think that's like a gift, but really I'm talking more so about like at a house when you see someone is holding their fruit in a basket. That's not necessarily a gift basket of fruit. It could just be a basket that they use to store, hold their fruit in. So growing up in my family, the family where I was the child, so to speak, we always had a fruit bowl. I don't have any kids right now, but now that I'm living with some roommates, not necessarily my old family, we still have a fruit bowl. It is a bowl, and the fruit we put inside of it, that's what I'm calling a fruit bowl. That is how we hold our fruit. When I see fruit in our house, sometimes it's in the fridge, but most of the time it's in this fruit bowl. I've also seen fruit in baskets, and I have seen fruit in cornucopias, but never in real life. I've never physically been in an area where the fruit is being contained by a cornucopia. Now, a lot of skeptics say, one of the big counterarguments here for the skeptics is that we are conflating images that we see of cornucopias spilling with produce, a lot of times around Thanksgiving, and we're just conflating those images with the pile of fruit that we see in the Fruit of the Loom logo. So, we see this ensemble of fruit, and then our brain just kind of confabulates it with times that we see in a cornucopia spilling with produce. And if that's as far as you're going to dig into the subject, it sounds reasonable enough. I'll admit that that is a perfectly valid counterargument. But it's when you start digging deeper into this that I think that is a vastly insufficient counterargument. So let me keep going with obscurity. Just think for yourself, how many times in your real life, like physically being there, have you seen fruit being contained in a cornucopia? In my opinion, personally, first-hand experience, never. And I'm guessing that for you, it's probably less than the times that you've seen fruit in a bowl or fruit in a basket. There could be even more obscure things, like, for example, you could potentially have your fruit just sitting in a grocery bag. You could think of the times that you've gone grocery shopping just for fruit and you see a bunch of fruit in a shopping cart. That's all well and good, but that doesn't change the fact that it seems like a basket / a bowl is much less obscure than a cornucopia when it comes to containing fruit. And I also say presenting fruit because when it comes to the Fruit of the Loom logo, they're not going to, in my opinion, they're not going to pick some container for fruit that, how should I say this? They're probably going to pick one that has a presentation quality to it, kind of like a basket or a bowl, or a cornucopia. A cornucopia is a beautiful way to present fruit. But how common is it such that you would conflate it? In my opinion, it's not common enough. It's not only not common enough, but it's kind of random. That's what I mean by obscurity. It's kind of a mix between random and not very common. Oh yes, I wrote down on here, I put two words, visual and language. So, semantical, word-based. Visually, I have seen fruit in a bowl or basket much more frequently than in a cornucopia. So if you're trying to attack this from the visual confabulation angle, let me let my cat in real quick so he doesn't make too much noise. If you're coming from the visual angle, I consider the cornucopia to be the underdog. And if you're coming from a word-based angle, I even more so consider a cornucopia to be the underdog. How many times have you heard the words fruit basket? Or even those two words in a sentence? How many times have you heard the word fruit bowl? I mean, this is an example that doesn't necessarily drive my point further, but fruit cake, From a word-based perspective, these are things that you hear a lot more than fruit cornucopia, because I have never heard fruit cornucopia. So if you want to take this from a visual standpoint, or a syntactical, semantical, word-based standpoint, language, I think cornucopia is the underdog in either case. So I could talk more, but I'm going to move on for now in order to save you guys time. Anecdotes. There are hundreds. I'm sure there are thousands. There might even be upwards of 10,000 personal anecdotes where someone remembers a cornucopia in the Fruit of the Loom logo, but they don't just kind of passively remember it casually. They vividly remember something. They can tie it to an experience. They have reinforcing details that corroborate that it, for them, had a cornucopia in the logo. So I'm just going to start talking about some of those. Let's start with the kind of isolated events that I've encountered online. The first one is this person who did the Fruit of the Loom logo for an art project, and they remember that what took them longer than anything else was the weaving pattern of the cornucopia. And one of your, a skeptical objection right now might be, well, baskets also have a weaving pattern. But regardless, first of all, the cornucopia, the Fruit of the Loom logo, there's no containers. It's always, according to this reality, it's always just been a pile of fruit. So, I don't want to get too lost digressing again, but this person doesn't just remember the weaving pattern. They remember everything about it. Let me try to explain myself. So last time I did this video, when I rewatched it, I noticed that right now when I'm looking at myself, my finger is pointing to, like on my screen, I can see it right now, I'm on selfie mode, so to speak. My finger is pointing to the right, but what I noticed that when I go to watch the video, it's like it flips. So when I'm doing this, I'm pointing to the right now. You guys are probably seeing me point to the left. So if that is the case, just invert everything I say in terms of left or right. If you look online, there is a picture of the Fruit of the Loom cornucopia, like the logo that so many of us remember. You can find that picture. It's not a primary source. Someone else kind of photoshopped it, and I think they did an excellent job. And what you see is, if this is the opening to the cornucopia, then the tail, if you want to call it that, goes up and to the right. So right now you guys might see it go to the left. Just know that I'm talking about going up and to the right. Listen to my words, I guess, not my actions, if that's the case. And this person who did the art project, they vividly remember exactly that. Not just that the weaving pattern took them longer than anything else. They remember everything about it being pretty much just like this picture, this secondary source picture that was photoshopped. It's very prevalent online. Going up to the right, and the very dimensions, everything about it, how large it was compared to the fruit, the opening of the cornucopia, where the fruit sat in relation to the cornucopia. And I think I'll move on because this isn't just my second time doing this video. This is my probably 5th or 6th time doing this video, and I'm really bad at editing, so I try and do it in one take. So let me just move on to my next anecdote. The Halloween one. So there are these 5 friends who wanted to dress up as the Fruit of the Loom guys for Halloween. You know, you got the green grapes, purple grapes, the apple, the green leaf, and the currants. One of the friends had this objection. Well, not really objection, but he wanted to put this thought forward. Shouldn't one of us be a cornucopia? And he wasn't saying that because he remembers any of the Fruit of the Loom guys in the commercial being a cornucopia. That's not it. None of them, myself included, I don't remember there ever being a cornucopia guy, even though I remember the cornucopia vividly from the logo. When I'd watch these commercials, they pretty much omitted the cornucopia in terms of the Fruit of the Loom guys, but that didn't strike me as odd because they're the Fruit of the Loom guys, not the fruit and the cornucopia of the loom, so to speak, guys. And, cornucopia is not a fruit. It never struck me as odd that the logo that contains a cornucopia never had a cornucopia guy in the commercials. That was perfectly reasonable for me. So let me get back to this anecdote. The objection, so to speak, was, if none of us dress up as a cornucopia, then I think they're going to a Halloween party. And then the objection was kind of like, aren't people, a lot of people are probably going to look at me, let's say I'm the apple, and think I'm just some lame apple for Halloween. And maybe if we're all standing together, maybe they'll recognize it, but it would be a lot more effective if one of us was a cornucopia in terms of getting people to recognize who we were actually being. None of the friends said anything along the lines of, what are you talking about, dude? There's no cornucopia in the Fruit of the Loom logo. What the hell? All of them were just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't remember if they decided, I don't think they did decide on being a cornucopia, any of them, but they did have this conversation. And let me address right now, these first 2 anecdotes, I found these online, and I always take something I find online with a grain of salt, but keep in mind, once you've encountered and piled up thousands of grains of salt, they become more meaningful than just a grain of salt. Another little digression there, but back to this one. Yeah, that's just very odd that none of them objected to the thought that there should be a cornucopia there. They all must have been like, oh yeah, the cornucopia from the logo. Great. Now yes, they could have all been confabulating it, but the more I go in this video, I'm hoping you'll see that confabulation doesn't seem to cut the mustard. And while I'm on that little digression that I was just on, I want to mention, yes, I've encountered hundreds of anecdotes online. Literally hundreds. I'm probably under 1,000, but it's definitely over 100. But not only that, I've spoken with friends and family, people I know closely. I've struck up conversations with people on the bus, walking in the grocery store. Now, that's kind of an odd thing to do, but sometimes you can look at someone and you can think to yourself, he looks like he might be capable of engaging in an unconventional conversation. I think I'm going to ask this person about that. He or she, sorry. So this isn't just online. This is real life that I keep saying real life as if online isn't real life, as if pictures aren't real life. But when I say real life, I mean physically being there. This isn't just online for me. This is speaking with people I know closely, and really asking them, pressing them for details. So it's not just me casually reading things and trying to splice together information. This is really, like I said, digging deep. I try and dig as deep as I can. And yeah, with these first two anecdotes, those were online. But this next one, I've encountered both, like I said, hundreds of anecdotes. With this one anecdote I'm about to explain to you guys, I'm pretty certain I've encountered over 100 online and dozens in real life. So let me get to that. I just called it loom baskets on my little piece of paper here. What's a loom basket? Okay, what do I mean by that? Now, keep in mind, when I say these 100 plus anecdotes, they're not all 100% the same. The very minute details tend to be different. Sometimes they're very similar, but from a bird's eye view, they're all the same. And when trying to talk about something with a linear language, I think most languages are linear, like English is very linear, it's kind of confusing to try and talk about a somewhat multi-dimensional topic, but I'm just going to, how do I say this? If I say this person was a child and they spoke to their mother, that doesn't mean that all these anecdotes, sometimes the person might have been a teen, sometimes they might have spoken with their father, so keep that in mind, but just for me to convey this using English, I'm just going to kind of narrow in and assume that they're all the same, just to help me speak it. So, imagine you're a child, you're looking at the Fruit of the Loom logo, a primary source. You're looking, let's say you have a shirt, and you're looking at the tag with the Fruit of the Loom logo on the back, and your mom is with you. You point to the logo and you say, hey mom, why is the loom in this picture, why is the loom shaped like that? Now, there's no loom. I don't know if you guys know what a loom looks like. It's kind of like for weaving textiles or something. Kind of looks like a wheel and some like yarn, so to speak, around it. You kind of spin it. I really don't know exactly. I just know enough to know it's definitely not a cornucopia. So why do we have children saying, why does this loom look like that? And they're pointing to a cornucopia. Why would they use the word loom? Well, put yourself into the shoes of someone who's never encountered the word cornucopia. They've never seen a cornucopia. They've never encountered the word loom. They've never seen a loom. Or maybe they have encountered it, but they've never been conscious that that's what it was. Put yourself into their shoes. Imagine looking at a logo with this horn-shaped basket, and it says Fruit of the Loom. You have fruit in this strange basket. The fruit are of the basket, fruit of the loom. The loom must be that horn-shaped basket. So when they ask their mom, why is the loom shaped like that? Their mom says, oh, that is not a loom. That is a cornucopia. And they might give this detail or that detail, but the bottom line is the child learned two things that day, if nothing else. They learned what a cornucopia is, and they learned what a loom is. And more specifically, they learned what a loom is not. And so later in life, often in these anecdotes, they'll talk about how, if there's some spelling test or something, well, not really spelling test, but if there's some word test, sorry, I don't know the word for it, they refer back to this memory of theirs where they learned what a loom is, and they learned what a cornucopia is and what it looks like. Now, mind you, if you're thinking that, oh, the mom also confabulated the same thing, so she was just referring to her confabulation and reinforcing his confabulation, no, these are anecdotes where, like I said, I gave this little thing. They're looking at this is not Fruit of the Loom, by the way, but they're looking at the Fruit of the Loom logo, a primary source. What is this right here? That's not confabulation. That is pointing at something tangible, and the mom saying, that right there, that's not a cornucopia, or sorry, that's not a loom, that's a cornucopia. Like I keep saying, I could keep going, but let's move on. So just very curious, all these, like I say, grains of salt, any of them isolated might not be, well, they're not overwhelming. They're not, you can't say it's more likely that the universe is merging parallel timelines or whatever you think the Mandela effect might be. If you just are looking at one grain of salt, Occam's razor suggests that it's confabulation. I totally agree. Occam's razor prefers confabulation over some very misunderstood, if it even exists, phenomena. I agree with you. But it's when you start looking into hundreds of grains of salt and you pile them up, and you don't just look at the grain of salt, you look at it with a magnifying glass and you really dig deep into what is going on there. That is when confabulation becomes very insufficient. So I think that is all I need to say about that. I've got two more. I don't know if you can see it. This is how I think, so I don't know if you can see it, but I started with, that's probably backwards for you guys. But I started with obscurity, went on to anecdotes. I've got two more, which I just titled like trademarks, ads, and then residues. So I'll do trademarks / ads right now. This is a kind of quick one, but if you look online, you can find so many very, I guess, suspicious, not suspicious, how would you say it? Almost like condemning things online that just make the confabulation counterargument seem even more insufficient. So let's just keep going with this. You can find, this is so weird. I don't know the exact terminology for like trademarks, patents, copyrights. I might definitely use the wrong words, so just please give me a little bit of slack with that. But you can find this, what would it be called? It was pretty much someone put forth let's just say trademark is what it is. I guess if you're doing this kind of thing and you have a logo, you use key terms so that if someone else is trying to do a similar thing in the future, they can look up the key terms and they know what to avoid. Like, for example, you don't want to get in some copyright issue, so when you're doing your logo for whatever item that you're trying to sell or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be an item, you can look up, for example, cornucopia and like fruit or something, and that way you can try to avoid copying someone else and getting into some kind of trouble there. Well, there was this, I wish I knew the exact words, but bear with me here. There was something put forward and it was redacted. Yes, it was redacted, but that doesn't make it any less suspicious. What was redacted was fruit of the loom. It was directly related to fruit of the loom, and in the key terms, cornucopia, horn of plenty. And this is referring to the logo. So you can go find this yourself. Very, very suspicious. You know what? Earlier when I was talking about obscurity, I should have mentioned I might have touched on this, but think of how obscure a cornucopia is compared to a basket or a bowl, and just think in hindsight in your life, like situations where you have fruit and a basket, fruit and a bowl, and then fruit and a cornucopia. Cornucopia just seems, I guess I did touch on this, it just seems so much less common, so much more obscure. So for this trademark, it was not, you don't find basket, even with a redacted trademark, you don't find basket or bowl or anything. You just see, on this one at least, cornucopia, horn of plenty. And, yes, this is what I wanted to touch on with obscurity. It would not be so bizarre if for every one person who remembers a cornucopia in the logo, you had at least one person remembering it being a basket or a bowl. But, like I said, I have encountered hundreds of these. Hundreds. I haven't not encountered one single person who remembers a fruit basket. Not one single person who remembers a fruit bowl. So even if I thought they were equally as obscure, this would still be very odd. For every 100 cornucopias, I'd expect at least 10. I mean, that's still giving the skeptics so much wiggle room. That's being so generous to them. I'd expect at least 10 for every 100. At least 10 at least 5 baskets, 5 bowls, maybe even a shopping cart, as ridiculous as that is. For every one cornucopia, or sorry, for every 100 cornucopias, at least 10 of any of these other containers. I've not encountered one person who remembers any of those. Not one. And I'm sure, I really don't doubt that there are handfuls of people who do, but this is not about how many people. This is a proportion thing. Proportionate to how many people remember the cornucopia. Way, 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 way too few people remember bowls or baskets for this to be confabulation. That is my opinion, at least. Oh, and if you think this is rebranding, the day I found out about this Mandela Effect, I went onto my computer, typed in Fruit of the Loom commercial. I started at the year 2000 because I was born in 1995. So if I was 5 years old, I don't want to digress too much, but I typed in Fruit of the Loom commercial 2000, no cornucopia. Okay, same thing, 2001, no cornucopia. 2002, 2003. I went all the way up to, I think it was 2016 at the time, no cornucopias. And then I thought to myself, well, it's definitely possible I could have seen it, as a really young child, and then that could have been the seed for confabulation. And I could have even seen a rerun. So I then went back to do 95, 96, 97. So I'd gone from 95 all the way up to present day at the time, 2016. And then I wanted to be extra, extra, like I said, reruns, you never know. I went all the way back to 1976, 76, 77, 78, didn't miss a single year, all the way up to present day, 2016 at the time, not one cornucopia. And I've heard so many people who look back through their old underwear and whatnot, their old shirts. They remember those very shirts having cornucopia. No cornucopia to be found. I wore whitey tighties as a kid. As embarrassing as that is, maybe, but excuse me. Yeah, I actually couldn't find any of those myself, so I don't have any primary sources that I could refer to. But from everyone I've spoken with, this is not rebranding. Please look for yourself. Please, if you want to, do it. Just try and find it. And you might, but if you do, I would be very, very surprised. This does not seem to be confabulation like I've been. Most of this video is about a counter-argument to the counter-argument of confabulation. But I also want to touch on, does not seem to be rebranding. This doesn't seem to be a common source of misinformation, as if somebody, let me think of some off-brand name, Fruit of the Swoon, and they had a cornucopia in their logo, and that's what you guys are confabulating. Some common source of misinformation. No. Coincidence? I've also been touching on coincidence when it comes to obscurity. What if it's just coincidence that everyone happens to, this ties into confabulation, happens to remember cornucopia? Well, after 1,000 people, coincidence does not seem very likely. Seems vastly, vastly insufficient. I just wanted to touch on those other potential explanations other than confabulation. Please try and think of some, but I've been racking my brain for them, and any of them that might seem reasonable at first, personally, that Occam's razor just cuts them to pieces really, really quickly. All right, so let's move on to the last subject I have here. Not subject, but sub-subject, which is residues. This is great. I'll start with I'll go from the least compelling up to the most compelling, in my opinion. So first, look up Kern County Soccer Park. And if you don't see an image that you'll obviously recognize as what I'm trying to refer to, then type in Kern County. So first of all, K-E-R-N, Kern County Soccer Park. If you don't see the image that I'm referring to, then type in Kern County Soccer Park cornucopia. That worked for me. Kern County Soccer Park Fruit of the Loom. That worked for me. I just checked these last night, so hopefully those key terms will get you there still. Find that image, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't need to use more words than that. Next, ant bully. I still have never seen ant bully. Never saw ant bully. I very vividly remember the cornucopia being in the logo. But it's not from seeing ant bully. I'm not confabulating with this thing where if you go and find a scene in ant bully, there is, I think the guy's shrunk down. the main character. I don't know if he's the main character, but someone shrunk down, and there's this pair of underwear. So, if I was the guy, there's this huge pair of underwear, and what you see is something of the loin, and this something up here, it's blocked out by shadow. All you see is of the loin, and then you see this cornucopia with, spilling with produce. Very interesting, once again. So you can find that, you should be able to find that easily just by typing ant bully cornucopia. That worked for me. So go ahead and do that. Now, I should mention, the cornucopia, the proportion is very off to what so many of us remember, but that doesn't make it any less suspicious. Like, this cornucopia is really fat, and even the cornucopia itself internally has different dimensions where it's really fat, and then it gets skinny a lot quicker than the one I remember from the Fruit of the Loom non-logo, to call it that. The one that doesn't exist and never has, allegedly. And even the fruit are smaller relative to it, but it's still very suspicious. Now, the last one with residues. I'm sure I don't doubt there are other residues, but these are the 3 that I found. And this last one has been touched on in several videos. Someone even did a video where they spoke with the album artist, or I believe it was his son. So please try and find that video. But Flute of the Loom, a Frank Weiss album, I think it was 1972, and clearly a play on words of Fruit of the Womb. Well, sorry, that was like almost a Freudian slip. Fruit of the Loom seems to be a play on words of Fruit of the Womb, but Flute of the Loom seems to be a play on words pretty blatantly of Fruit of the Loom. But that in itself gives nothing to the whole cornucopia thing until you look at the album artwork. And you see this flute. I keep doing this thing. So anytime I do this is the opening to either a cornucopia or some kind of corollary to a cornucopia. Well, this analog to the cornucopia is a flute. And here's the opening, and then the flute kind of like bends off in the same direction, going to the right and up, which for you guys might be going to the left and up. My apologies. But how odd is that? And then just look at it. It's filling with produce, and you got this flute, and it's... Oh, crap. So, maximum file size reached. That means that it just, I have to do another video, and hopefully I can edit these together. So hopefully, you guys on YouTube, if you're listening to me right now still, I figured out how to splice 2 videos together. Awesome, I learned something, I guess. So I'll keep going, because I wasn't quite finished when my video cut me off there. What an asshole. Just kidding. Anyways, that was kind of odd timing because I'm pretty much done. So I do want to give at least some kind of closing to this so that it doesn't just cut out with some cold ending like that. Let me just do a little refresher on what we've discussed. Obscurity. The cornucopia is, in my opinion, far more obscure than a basket or a bowl. Or at least somewhat more obscure than either of those. Yet, I've not encountered one single person who remembers it being a bowl in the logo or a basket. Yes, we have people who, I don't remember. It might have been. But of the people who have a vivid memory either way, with those people, I have not encountered a single person who remembers a bowl or a basket. Next, the anecdotes. I discussed the art project, the Halloween friends, and the hundreds of children and teens and probably even adults who thought that a loom was a cornucopia because of what I discussed. Then I talked about the trademarks / advertisements and this whole little cornucopia, horn of plenty, and the trademark key terms, so to speak. And then last I discussed the residues, the Kern County Soccer Park, Ant Bully, Underwear Scene, and Flute of the Loom by Frank Weiss. So please look into all of these yourself. Be skeptical about it. I hope I'm not coming across as though I don't like skepticism. No, I love skepticism. What I don't like is being overly skeptical such that you're not open-minded. You need to be as open-minded as you are skeptical, and vice versa. That is really the only way to be thorough with anything in life, especially the Mandela Effect. So please, look these up yourself. don't just take my word for it. Use your own discernment, but please be open to the fact, not fact, how do I say it? Please be open to the possibility that if you have always been skeptical and shitting on the Mandela Effect, please be open to the fact that it might warrant a closer look. So please give it a closer look. Seriously, please do, because people shit on me all the time. Think I'm some crazy nut job, think I'm daft, think I'm gullible, think I'm crazy. And they haven't. They're the ones who've looked into it for 3 minutes and decided, oh, I've looked into it far enough to know that it's just confabulation. And it totally discredits my hours. 24 hours in a day? Oh, I've spent days investigating the Mandela Effect. It's been 2.5 years now, I believe. In the beginning, I was researching probably 4 to 5 hours a day. So, hundreds of hours of research. I don't think I'm crazy. I think I try and exercise discernment. I try and exercise Occam's razor. So I don't want to get too much into another tangent again. But please, yes, use your own discernment. But don't just dismiss. Don't just refute. And please, please, please do not just ridicule people because you think that they're crazy. Especially when they're the one who's been doing way more research than you. You know, I guess I will go on a tangent because this bugs me. When someone refutes and dismisses and ridicules you, yet they have researched it far less than you, and then when you try and give your side of the story, they just don't even want, not only do they not want to hear it, they are not willing to hear it, they refuse. It's not just frustrating. It actually, I don't take things personally a lot of time because I really don't care. If you're going to be an asshole like that, then I don't care what you think of me. So it doesn't hurt my feelings. It's not that person hurts my feelings. What hurts my feelings is when I think about how I live in a world where overwhelmingly people are like that. And it's disheartening, I'll tell you that. Anyways, I'll end it by saying that we just had Thanksgiving recently, and if I remember correctly, I have 47 subscribers now, and I think that is absolutely awesome. When I started this channel, I would have been happy with 10 subscribers. So 47 is nothing in terms of YouTube in general, but for me, that means a lot. It really makes me excited, and it makes me want to make these videos. I just came upon more time. I should hopefully have more free time here, so I should be able to do videos hopefully once a week. I'd absolutely love that. So please, if you can think of anything that you'd like me to touch on, anywhere from anything I've touched on before to anything that you think that you want me to touch on, I am an information addict. Not just information, but you know, I'm just addicted to thinking about things from multiple perspectives and giving my point of view and taking into consideration other points of view. I'm all about that. So if there's anything you guys want me to touch on, just let me know in the comments. I would be absolutely happy to do so. What else should I say? I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I really hope you did have a great Thanksgiving. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I look forward to doing more. Have a nice day.